Defense attorney Don Schweitzer. Don, how important is that to this case that you've got this entomologist, again, kind of veering into decomposition of fluid, but at the end of the day, the defense is trying to say there's no body in the car and we can prove it by the evidence, right?
They seem to be saying that. I just question why they're saying that. We all know that their theory is that there was an accidental drowning, somebody panicked, and the body was transported to some place. The body had to have been put into a trunk. So what are they trying to prove? Maybe they're trying to show that it was more of a panic than, you know, somebody driving around with a dead body in the back of the car. But I just think that a lot of time spent on this is going to really hurt the defense more than the prosecution.
What do you think the jury's doing with this? Because it was tough stuff to listen to. Tough stuff in just the sense of, I mean, you guys trying to teach, it's dry material. How do you make sure that connects with the jury? And does this stuff even connect with a jury?
Well, Mike, less is more. Okay, and you got to learn when to put in evidence, when to fight your battles, and when not to. You know, if there isn't a consistent theory, what you're going to do is make the jury think that you don't know what you're doing and that you have no credibility. So far, I haven't seen any connecting of the dots, and I really question why you would spend a lot of time on this type of evidence. Mm-hmm. You know, the little girl died. She was put someplace. It had to have been in a trunk. I don't really care how long it was in the trunk. It's whether or not she died by accident or somebody killed her. I mean, that's what the jury's going to have to decide.
Got it. Hey, on that point, let's listen to, again, Dr. Timothy Huntington. And he laid out a point, this was in front of the jury, that, hey, flies in the trunk, not surprising, because there was a garbage bag in there. Let's listen.
I would have expected to find, as I did in these experiments, hundreds, thousands of whole dead insects, not only in the trunk of the vehicle, but also in the passenger compartment. In the studies that I conducted, many insects were found in the passenger compartment of the vehicle because they were able to migrate their way out of the trunk into the passenger compartment. In the absence of those, the fly leg literally means nothing, especially given that it was found in a bag of trash.
Okay, Don, that's simple. Of course, he's saying, of course you got flies. There's garbage in there. Does the defense score with that?
I guess this guy's an expert. I mean, he's seen dead carcasses, you know, in the back of cars. He's done studies. He knows about flies. I don't think that the prosecution's going to discredit what he says he knows. But is that really helping the defense here? Okay. Did they score big points? I don't think so. I think what the defense ought to do is be consistent with their theory. And the theory is that there was an accident. And that's where this evidence should be going, not towards all this science, you know, trying to disprove that there was a body in the car.
Yeah, they're going after the prosecution's evidence, what they don't have, not what we have.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's an absence of evidence here.
Yeah. Okay. That would be pretty powerful for the jury to hear that if they did, that, hey, if you do have decomposition, very obvious, right?
Well, you know, in the time that I've been watching this show, the one thing that I think the defense could be doing is setting the Casey to testify. You know, this might be an indication she's going to testify, stating that the body was transported by somebody else's vehicle, possibly her father. And maybe that's what the emphasis on this is. But again, how do they get past the odor, you know, as Beth had stated? I mean, the odor was so strong, and the vehicle was abandoned right at that time. So the circumstantial evidence would indicate that the body was in that trunk, despite what this expert says. And I think that this expert's going to be impeached very severely by the prosecution based on prior inconsistent statements. And they're going to take a look at his studies and see really, you know, how the control factors in his studies compare to a case like this.
Right. And speaking to that point, his study involves a pig in the trunk of a car, and this is in Nebraska in the early fall months of September, not Florida, not a human body, not a little child. So there is some places. And to your point, Don, let's listen to Jeff Ashton as, again, jury's out of the room, and he's really on fire here as he's trying to question, wait a minute, this guy's no decomposition expert. Let's listen.
Ashton.
It is not even similar to any answer he gave or opinion he gave. He apparently now wants to state that he can identify the color of decomposition fluid as opposed to other fluids. That is in no way contained in his deposition.
Okay, Don, that's some of the things you're talking about there. Jeff Ashton, very good, and I'm sure he's going to come at Mr. Huntington pretty hard. But let's get back to the point you made about Casey setting the stage for her testifying. Do you think she's going to take the stand? There's a basic question we're all been trying to answer.
Well, she doesn't make a very good witness. She's a pathological liar. She can never keep her story straight. And, you know, it's probably going to backfire on the defense. But how else do you get the defense's story before this jury? You know, I think that the defense might think that she's sympathetic, and maybe they'll put her up there and hope that somebody's going to give her a break because they just like her. But that could work against her because the prosecution is going to cross-examine her and probably make her look like she has no remorse, that she is a cold-blooded killer, and that she's even willing to sacrifice her family members, you know, in certain circumstances. Right. So, you know, she's probably not going to be liked.
Right. Okay, so about the defense, and there are two big theories. Number one, that little Kaylee died accidental drowning. And number two, why is Casey such a liar? Why does she act this way? Well, it's sex abuse at the hands of her own father. Even her brother tried to molest her at one point. Does the defense have to deal with that? As a defense, you don't have to prove anything, right?
You don't have to prove anything, but when you get in front of the jury at the beginning of the case and you say, this is what the evidence is going to show, and you don't show it to any degree, that's going to be troubling at the end. In the closing arguments, the prosecution's just going to have a heyday with that. And the only way that they could make that case is by putting Casey up there. So I think they're in a catch-22 situation. They don't have to prove anything, but they've already kind of said that they will.
And in closing, does the prosecution flat out call them out and say, defense promised you this, did not deliver? Do they,
yeah,
do they go that far?
Yeah, they could do that, but they can't say, and you didn't hear from the defendant. She would have said something. Obviously, that would have been an error, and they're not going to go there. But they could say, look, you heard these promises, and they were not kept, and you only have one story that makes sense, our story.
Got it. Has Tim Huntington been effective since the lunch break here, especially with that last piece of sound where he is, you know, in simple terms saying, we have trash in a trunk, we have bugs feeding on trash?
I got to admit, I think that he is effective. I'm watching him. He does not seem like he's somebody that's stretching his expertise. I'm convinced so far that he knows what he's talking about. But, you know, we have to reserve our judgment because the prosecution gets to cross-exam and possibly call back their experts with regard to this stuff. So keep an open mind.
Yep, got it. Okay.